These fake HOA cops pointed guns at me because I refused to let them enter my home under a made-up emergency compliance rule. I was standing in my doorway when it happened. Front door open, one hand still on the frame, the other relaxed at my side. Two men in black vests marked HOA cops stood on my porch with pistols raised, muzzles steady, eyes hard. Not deputies, not city police, just uniforms bought online and confidence borrowed from someone who thought fear was authority. "Step aside," the one on my left said. "Emergency HOA compliance. We're entering the residence." I didn't move. "Under what law?" I asked. He didn't answer. He just tightened his grip and angled the barrel closer to my chest. "You're obstructing an HOA's safety action." That's when I knew this wasn't about a rule. It was about control. And the mistake they made was assuming I'd panic. Before we dive in, comment which country you're watching from. Let's see how far this story travels. Because to understand why two fake HOA cops thought they could point guns at a homeowner over a violation, you need the backstory. I keep my head down. I moved into this neighborhood for quiet. No parties, no drama, no HOA meetings. I don't argue. I document, and I read the bylaws. A month after I moved in, the HOA rolled out something they called the Emergency Compliance Access Rule. According to the notice, any home deemed a community safety concern could be entered by HOA's security without notice. No warrant, no court order, just a clipboard in confidence. The trigger, my exterior security camera. They said it faced the street and posed a privacy risk. What they meant was it recorded everything, including the late-night knock attempts, the parked cars idling too long, and the quiet pressure campaigns that make people comply. I replied in writing, cited state law, cited the HOA's own bylaws, requested a vote record for the ordinance. There wasn't one. The reply didn't come back from legal. It came from the vice president, Linda Hartwell. Final compliance inspection scheduled. Non-compliance will result in enforcement. After that, the escalation started. Notices taped to the door. Safety warnings. A black SUV idling across the street at night. Neighbors whispering that they'd handed over keys because it was easier. I didn't. This morning, they showed up. Two men, guns out, claiming emergency authority that doesn't exist. "Disable the camera," the right one said. "Then hand us a spare key. HOA will secure the property." I met his stare. "You don't have that power." He laughed. Short, sharp. "We do today." That's when he raised the gun fully. Not a warning, not a bluff, a decision. My heart rate didn't spike. Training has a way of sanding panic down to nothing. I noted the distance, the angles, the tremor in his hands, the porch rail behind him, the camera above my door still recording everything. "I'm not afraid of you," I said quietly. And in that moment, it stopped being about keys, cameras, or made-up rules. It became about survival. And 5 minutes later, they would regret every step that brought them to my door. His finger tightened on the trigger. That was the moment the noise in my head disappeared. No panic, no shouting, just clarity. I saw the tremor in his wrist, the way his shoulders were too high, the way the second HOA cop behind him shifted his weight like he didn't want to be there, but didn't know how to leave. Two guns, two untrained men, one narrow porch. I didn't announce anything. I didn't bluff. I moved. The instant the barrel dipped toward my sternum, I stepped inside the line of fire and smashed my left forearm into his gun wrist, driving it hard to the outside. The shot went off anyway. An explosive crack that blew splinters from the door frame inches from my head. My ears rang, but my hands were already working. I clamped down, twisted, and leveraged his wrist the way the SEALs drills until it becomes reflex. Bone gave. He screamed. The gun clattered onto the porch boards. The second HOA cop panicked. He raised his pistol with both hands, eyes wide, finger already curling. No command, no warning, just fear. I kicked the first man backward into the railing, snatched the fallen gun, and dropped to one knee to stabilize. Training took over. Front sight, low center mass, legs. I fired once. The round punched into the second man's thigh, and he went down hard, screaming, his weapon skidding across the concrete as he collapsed against the steps. He tried to crawl, dragging his leg, shock setting in fast. The first HOA cop lunged at me from the side, one arm useless, the other swinging wild. I stepped offline and drove the butt of the pistol into his jaw. He dropped like a sack, head bouncing once against the porch post before he went still. I backed up, controlled my breathing, and scanned. No third man, no movement from the street, just neighbors shouting from behind curtains, and the two imposters bleeding on my porch. The second one was still conscious, clutching his leg, eyes darting between me and the gun in my hand. Don't shoot again," he gasped. "Please." "Hands where I can see them," I said, calm, flat, the same tone I'd heard 1,000 times before. "Kick the gun away," he did, weakly. I kicked both weapons out of reach and stepped back. My heart rate slowed. The ringing in my ears faded. "Who sent you?" I asked. He shook his head, teeth chattering. "We were just supposed to scare you." "Get the key." "That's it." "Who?" I repeated. His eyes filled. "Linda. Linda Hartwell. She said you were a problem. Said if you didn't comply, we needed to make you comply. A problem for reading the law. For saying no. For not being afraid." The first HOA cop groaned and tried to sit up. I pressed my foot to his chest and pushed him flat again. "Stay down," I said. "You're done." I pulled out my phone and dialed 911, never taking my eyes off them. "Two armed men attempted an illegal forced entry," I said. "Shots fired in self-defense. Suspects down. Send police and medical." When I ended the call, the second man was crying openly. "We didn't know," he sobbed. "We didn't know you'd fight back." I looked at both of them. Bleeding, broken, stripped of borrowed authority. "You didn't know," I said quietly, "because you never asked the right question." Red and blue lights began to paint the street, and that was the exact moment they understood what those 5 minutes had cost them. If you're enjoying this HOA story so far, like and subscribe, because the story is only going to get better. The sirens reached my street fast. Red and blue lights washed over the houses as patrol cars boxed in the block from both directions. Doors opened. Officers stepped out with weapons drawn, voices sharp and controlled. They took in the scene in seconds. 2 men bleeding on my porch, one unconscious, one screaming and clutching his leg. Both guns kicked far out of reach. "Hands up. Step away from the porch," an officer ordered. I complied immediately. Slow, deliberate. Palms open. No sudden movement. Years of training kicked in without conscious thought. They moved past me and secured the suspects first. One officer pinned the conscious one's shoulders, while another applied a tourniquet. The screaming never stopped. Pain has a way of stripping authority faster than any badge ever could. When they turned back to me, a sergeant stepped forward. "Are you armed?" "Not anymore," I said evenly. "Any weapons on you?" "No," he nodded. "ID." I waited for permission, then reached exactly where instructed and handed it over. My military ID sat on top. The sergeant looked down, then up, then back down again. His posture shifted, not impressed, not intimidated, just aware. "Navy SEAL?" he asked quietly. "Former?" I replied. "Honorable discharge." That was it. No applause, no questions, no commentary. "All right," he said. Stand by. We'll talk once the scene is secure. They cuffed both men. One had to be lifted into the cruiser. The other was loaded into an ambulance under guard, still babbling about orders and keys, and how none of this was supposed to happen. Body cam stayed on. Neighbors stayed filming. Everything stayed documented. That mattered because what happened next didn't come from a confession. It came from paper. By the next morning, detectives had subpoenaed HOA records, meeting minutes, email servers, financial ledgers, vendor contracts, everything Linda Hartwell had touched since becoming vice president. What they found was systematic. The security ordinance had never been voted on, never recorded, never filed. But dozens of homeowners had already surrendered keys, and those keys had been logged, cataloged, and used. Homes entered during inspections, valuables moved, cash missing, prescription meds gone, complaints dismissed. Linda hadn't wanted security. She wanted access. The HOA security officers weren't guards. They were couriers. Muscle disposable intimidation tools, who never asked why they were always sent to homes whose owners questioned her authority. My refusal didn't threaten her power. It threatened her operation. That's why she escalated. That's why she sent them armed. That's why she wanted fear instead of compliance. 2 days later, Linda Hartwell was arrested in her office. No dramatic confrontation, no shouting, just handcuffs, evidence boxes, and a long walk past neighbors who finally understood why things had felt wrong for so long. The charges stacked fast. Conspiracy to commit armed intimidation, impersonation, facilitation, illegal entry coordination, theft through abuse of authority, reckless endangerment. She took a plea. 12 years in state prison, $284,000 in restitution, permanent ban from holding any HOA position anywhere. The 2 fake HOA cops didn't fare better. One pleaded guilty to aggravated assault with a firearm and impersonating authority 8 years inside. The other, the one I shot, survived, but the damage was permanent. Nerve destruction, mobility loss. He took a plea and received 6 years plus civil liability for every home he helped breach. As for me, no charges, no citations, no second viewing, clear self-defense, clear escalation, clear documentation. The porch was repaired, the bullet hole patched. The neighborhood went quiet again, the way it should have been from the start. And every time I step onto that porch now, I remember one simple truth. Authority only works when people are afraid to question it. And fear dies fast when it meets someone who knows the law, the limits, and exactly when to stand their ground. The end.